And now on the line is Killian Bratnock. Killian is the manager of Raidió Fáilte in Belfast. Killian, welcome back to Near FM.
Thank you very much. How's it all going?
Good, yeah. Thanks, Killian. I've done loads of Oscarga interviews with yourselves and Raidió Fáilte over the last 15 years, between interviewing yourself, Owen O'Neill, and Fergus O'Hare. Today is my first time to do an Osperla interview, which is dope. As today is our first Osperla interview together, Killian, could you tell our listeners today on Near FM, that is, for those who don't know, about who Raidió Fáilte are and a bit about the history and evolution of the station, please?
Yeah, so I suppose Raidió Fáilte began its first foray into broadcasting almost 40 years ago under the name Raidió Fáilte, and it'll be, I'm going to say, St. Patrick's Day, St. Patrick's Day 1985. So coming up on 40 years of what we now have, or we know as Raidió Fáilte. It spent a couple of years, I suppose, broadcasting intermittently, and then the name changed and they began broadcasting pre-legally, I suppose the best term would be, because there was no such thing as a community radio license back then, and we eventually, after many years of asking for some type of license, we were awarded a community radio license for a community of interest, that being Irish language, the Irish language community here in Belfast, and that we started broadcasting on the 15th of September 2006 under the auspices of Ofcom. So it won't be very long until we're reaching 20 years under Ofcom. In that time, you had, I suppose, 3 or 4 different homes for the station, beginning in the Ardskull and then up in the Culterland, I suppose halfway up the Falls Road, where it spent many years. And after that, it was at the Twin Spires complex, which is beside the International Wall of mural pictures. And since October 2018, we have made our home in our very own Sign Jarha, I suppose, totally designed for radio broadcasting, a building which houses 7 studios and also a number of offices and rooms and whatever. So we're going strong. We're planning, obviously, we don't intend to go anywhere, and we are hoping that the things that most people are suggesting and saying should be happening, we hope that they will happen sooner rather than later.
Okay. I haven't visited your station yet, but from seeing photographs and videos of your premises, the building you have looks fantastic, And Belfast and West Belfast, where you are based, is doing very well for the Irish language in general and for a long time, isn't it, Killian?
Yeah, I suppose I attended a couple of events recently, one in Dublin and one in Galway. And the reason I attended those events was I was invited by Oireachtas na Gaeilge to be part of a talks panel to speak about the new Kneecap movie after showing. So the first one in Dublin was, I'm going to say, the 11th of October. And after that, the 24th of October down in Galway. And the premise of it was an opportunity for Irish language speakers and I suppose people working in any of the public bodies to attend such an event and to network, I suppose, and to hear a little bit about, what actually is portrayed in the film, and, what the strength of the Irish language in the north. And on the night, I suppose I spoke about, obviously people know about the story of Gaeltacht Wohershai, or the Shaw's Road Gaeltacht, and you're going, it's probably coming up in 55 years since it was first mooted, and then you had, since the Bunskull Football First, the very first primary school fully through Irish language in Belfast, was since it began. But on the night, I mentioned, like the Irish language community in Belfast has always been very strong, and not just in the Shaws Road, Gaeltacht area. There are many areas around Belfast, like North Belfast and Short Strand in East Belfast, and other areas where Irish has always been very strong, and there's always been a very strong Irish language community. And that, even going back to the 40s, if you like, you had An Cumann Clonard, which is on Hawthorne Street in Belfast. Even going back to the 20s, whenever things were happening where Irish was really flourishing, and it was dangerous, to be an Irish language speaker, because the pogroms, Belfast pogroms, happened at that time. Even 10 years before that, if you think of the people that were involved, early 1900s, who founded the first Conradh na Gaeilge branch in Belfast on the Beersbridge Road. Huge names like Francis Joseph Bigger and Owen McNeill and people like that, where there was a huge revival and interest in Irish, but unfortunately at the time people with other views wanted to quash that, and to a certain amount they were successful in stopping the growth. But in terms of Irish language growth and vitality at the minute, Belfast are miles ahead of anywhere else in the country. Something that is, it's discussed, but it's not said loud or often enough, that if people really are serious about promoting Irish language, they really need to be looking at Belfast and the 6 counties to see what is happening, and take the good practice that's there, and follow it.
And you even have a Gaeltacht quarter in West Belfast, and Closh the Forest, the Gael Closh or second level Gael school is hugely oversubscribed, isn't it, Kenny?
Yeah, it's the largest Irish language school on this island, and has been for a long time. There are currently over 1,000 students attending that school, and many children just can't get a place in it. It's hugely oversubscribed. So are the Irish language primary schools here. There are a number of actually campaigns at the minute. One of them, if you're following social media, there's a group called Gu Nadisti, or the Parents' Voice, and they are campaigning to have extra classes in each year group for children that want, and parents that want their children to attend Gaeliges or Irish medium education. You're at the minute, because of there is no availability. There are hundreds of children losing out because they can't get a place in Belfast and in other places in their year group in Irish language medium education.
Yeah, and Closh the First is so oversubscribed that there's a demand in North Belfast for a second Gael Closh in Belfast, I believe.
They've campaigned for a long time to try and get a site, and they had one earmarked many years ago, which it houses the Belfast School of Music, but at the time it wasn't being used during the day. It was only after school hours that it was being used. Now, since then, I suppose in the last 10 years, a special educational needs school was housed in there, and now it is used for that. So another site was investigated, and still is, I suppose, on the cards, but there's an awful lot of things that possibly could derail it. But there's a site up beside Bunskull or Gaelskull Aina, which is outside of Belfast, if you're heading up towards Glengormley on the Hightown Road, and there have been committees, trying to work that a second post-primary site could be developed there, Irish medium education, but it's still kind of it's in no man's land at the minute.
It'd be fantastic. I'd say it will happen eventually. We don't know how long it'll take, but it'd be fantastic when it happens. Okay, Killian, the main thing that inspired me to get in touch with you today for this interview, and I've spoken to you on Near FM Osquaga about this before, is that yourselves and Raidió Fáilte believe that the station should be available on FM radio across Northern Ireland. And you're on, I saw you on New York TG Car report a couple of days ago
Hmm.
talking about this. Could you just fill our listeners in more about this?
Yeah, well, I suppose going back to what I said about the Ofcom Community of Interest license that we have, any type of community radio license that Ofcom has awarded only allows you to broadcast within a 5 kilometre radius. Now, we were very lucky, and I suppose in exceptional circumstances, they allowed us to increase the power of our broadcast so to surpass the 5 kilometre radius. Suppose, depending on geography and topography, you can hear on a very good day Raidió Fáilte in parts of Belfast, or Greater Belfast, if you like, that are outside of that 5 kilometre radius. There are areas, I suppose, where there's open water between Carrickfergus and Helens Bay. You can't hear the station on FM whilst you're travelling, but as soon as you get as far as the likes of Helens Bay or Carrickfergus, which kind of sit opposite each other on either side of the water, you can get it there because the signal obviously goes out. We have always believed that the Irish language community in the 6 counties here should be served better, and that for any community there needs to be a number of different services, that one of them be an Irish language media. And I suppose we do, and we can get radio in the Gaeltachta, that's okay, but obviously it's how it's based in what we have to call, in a different limit. I suppose BBC Gaeilge now and again have maybe 1 or 2 programs during their weekly schedule, so they have committed to broadcast 4 hours of Irish language media, and it's not technically completely 100% Irish. So when the European Charter for Regional or Minority Languages got in touch to say they would be on a on-the-spot visit to the UK and the Isle of Man, they made the dates available to us. They arrived on the 19th of February this year and spent the week here, 19th to the 23rd of February, and they met with many different groups and people from the Irish language sector. I just happened to be invited to the meeting for Irish language media, and we put forward, the people that were attending that meeting put forward the suggestions and the arguments that we've been doing for a long time about the provision of Irish language media for the Irish language community here in the 6 counties, and the responsibilities and I suppose the duty. Yeah, so what's clearly set out by the European Charter with regards provision of Irish language media, they wanted to know were, for example, the local government or the UK government doing what they were supposed to, and we had to say no, they're not. They're not doing much of. They're doing enough to get a tick in a box in some of the items, and in many other items they're not conforming or fulfilling their obligations at all. So there is a report online, and anybody can go on and read it, and it goes through a number of different minority and regional languages. Just go to the part about Irish language, and it's 2.2.2, and it's recommendations by the Committee of Experts on how to improve the protection and promotion of Irish in the United Kingdom. And there are a number of different points there, immediate recommendations for immediate action, and there are also further recommendations. So we have been mentioned. Raidió Fáilte is mentioned in the further recommendations, and the wording of it is, it's point J, and it is facilitate the broadcasting of private radio programs in Irish on a regular basis and extend the broadcast radius of Raidió Fáilte. Now, there's a lot of things, in the melting pot that would either delay or would scupper the whole thing. Ofcom have not awarded a community license to any radio station in a long time. What they are doing now, they're moving towards a thing called small scale DAB radio. And they have different areas where they want people to buy into a broadcast service where that station can be heard in the Leinster or within the radius of that small scale DAB antenna. So, it doesn't cover the whole of the 6 counties at the minute. There's one for the Foyle DAB, so it's based in Derry, and it serves an area which includes Limavady, Dungiven, Strabane in County Tyrone, Derry City itself, and that's just one area. Now, if Raidió Fáilte wanted to get onto that there to broadcast, it would cost us anything from £3,000 a year. Now, there are about 4 or 5 others in the north that are either currently set up or very close to being set up. And if we wanted to cover the whole of the north, you're talking about maybe 8 to 10 different small-scale DAB broadcasters who will charge fees anything up to £3,000 a year. And if, we don't have £30,000 to spend on broadcasting outside our immediate area. Unfortunately, the funding that we do get from Forest na Gaeilge is limited. We and Radio na Lifa are funded through the exact same scheme, and for that, for the next 3 years of that scheme, which will begin next year, 2025, and run to 2027, there hasn't been an increase in the amount of funding available. The same amount of euros is available. It will be €280,000 per year, and unfortunately for us in the 6 counties here, the rate of exchange isn't very kind to us this time round, so we're actually going to be a lot worse off, about £10,000 less in funding available to us because of the exchange rate from euro to sterling. And obviously all other fees, salaries, affiliation fees, things like that, they're going up. Energy bills, everything like that. So we will, and have been, I suppose, hit very badly with the amount of funding. The problem, I suppose, where Forest na Gaeilge are stuck or are hamstrung is the fact that the local government here, the executive instrument, are and have been for a long time very slow and almost completely still in terms of funding anything Irish language based. And I suppose there is no real indication that things will get better. There are a lot of sources of funding from the executive are actually being pulled or stopped completely.
Okay, Killian, if it does happen that Raidió Fáilte yourselves get extra funding from Forest na Gaeilge, either through the Republic government or the Northern Ireland executive, like if Raidió Fáilte was to be available across Northern Ireland over the next couple of few years, would it just be on DAB or would it be on FM or both if you got the funding? Because I've heard some people say that the future of radio is DAB, so I'm not kind of sure about FM. What's the story like?
Well, I suppose the conversation about what is the future of radio began maybe 20, 25 years ago when people wanted radio stations to come off FM and use DAB. That was, that was 25 years ago, and people are reluctant to move because so far it hasn't proved to be any better. It might be close to being just as good as FM, but it is not any better. If Raidió Fáilte got extra funding, we would see, and this is the big question, despite what local government or the UK government can say or do, Ofcom have the final decision on whether your broadcasting radius can be increased or decreased. So it would be, we'd be very foolish to say no, we're not going to go on DAB. If it is the only way for Raidió Fáilte to be broadcast outside of our current limitations, then we would have to look that way. Now, what are the advantages of that? I suppose the thing people need to remember is that, yes, we are available online through our website. You can listen to us anywhere in the world. A lot of people, they have their phones now, their smartphones nowadays, and they bring up our website and they listen through whatever device in their car radio. The advantage that DAB would give is that would take that just that one step away, and that you would be available, or that Raidió Fáilte will be available to listen to in any car that has been manufactured since 2015. All cars throughout the world have these DAB radios since 2015 onwards. So that's the only real advantage.
Yeah. Go ahead,
yeah. So we wouldn't rule anything out. We'd be very foolish to say no, we can't go down that road. If it's the only way available to us, we'd have to look at right, okay, how can this be paid for? And cost is massive, so we would need funding specifically for that purpose, for us to enable us to go down that road.
It'd be an ideal world, I suppose. It'd be great if you're on FM and DAB, but as you said yourself, if you got DAB only, it would be fantastic as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Killian. It's great talking today in the FM for our first interview, Asperda. Just before you go for our Asperda interview, I understand that Near FM has done partnership projects with your station over the years, and although I'm not a manager in Near FM, I know that Kieran O'Murray and the other managers in Near FM will be more than happy to do them again with you any time in the future.
Yeah. Obviously, completely. Yes, we would definitely be up for that too.
Okay, Killian, have you been in the new Belfast Grand Station since the second stage of it came on stream last week? And if you have, can you tell me your perceptions of it?
I haven't been since the new stage has opened up. I recently had to go to a couple of different places on public transport, and I was able to still use the old Europa bus station and the Glengall Street pickups and drop-offs, but it's right beside it. It's very impressive, I suppose, as a building. What I understand, it's a silent centre, so there are no announcements. If you are going somewhere, you really have to keep an eye on the information boards to where you're going. As far as I know, the Belfast to Dublin Enterprise train service is up and running as of yesterday, Monday the 14th of October. So I happened to have to go to Dublin on the train at the end of August, and it was quite awkward because it wasn't ready. We had to drive from Belfast to Portadown train station, which was at least another 2 stops away from us, get our tickets for the Enterprise service, board the train in Portadown, and come off again on our way back and drive back to Belfast. I suppose it was a family day out, one of those things, but it was, it wasn't as easy as it should have or could have been. With regards the centre itself, I did happen to listen to one of the people involved on another radio station speaking about how they were able to deliver the centre on time and on the budget, that a budget of 300,000 sterling. That's brilliant. I know that it was reported on many stations on radio and TV that the original budget for it was 200,000, and
200,000. This is for the station. Is it? You mean 200 million, 300 million? Is that what?
Sorry, yeah. Millions. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. But it exceeded that by, well, that was, I'm going to say, July, August, when that report came out, and that it had already exceeded 350 million. I suppose a lot of talk at the minute and the last wee while has been about the lack of Irish language signage in the centre, and I know that I'm going to say the Friday the 13th of September this year that Andram Jarrig went down and held a sit-in with their huge Dram Jarrig flag, and it does seem that TransLink are themselves behind the decision not to put up any Irish language signage. That is at the crux of it all. It wasn't government, it wasn't pressure groups, anything like this. It was TransLink who took the decision not to serve the Irish language community here in Belfast.
Okay, we won't go into that today. We'll maybe talk about it again. But I believe the first stage of the Grand Central Station opening was for buses, and now it's also for rail. So it's fully operating. But it could. I read a report. It could be developed further. Do you know anything about that?
Well, there is a bit of a story in the news that it will have an effect on a very historic bridge named the Boyne Bridge, and there are pressure groups from residents who do not want that bridge removed to facilitate the transport, I suppose, train and bus services. In the last few days, a few very threatening messages, graffiti messages, have come up beside where work was supposed to begin yesterday in taking that down, and there was a number of very, very real threats made to dissuade anyone who was working for whatever company to begin demolition work on that bridge. So it's quite topical at the minute.